This is the first wall that the Chicano artists began their murals here in San Diego, California.
In the year 1970, in the city of San Diego, under the Coronado Bridge, lied a little piece of land. A little piece of land that the Chicano community of Logan Heights wanted to make into a park. A park where all the chavalitos could come and play in, so they wouldn't have to play in the street and get run over by a car.
4 decades ago, the Mexican community from around San Diego's Barrio Logan carried out a mass protest and took over a piece of land under the Coronado Bridge that they had been promised as a park. It was a fight they won, and it is a victory the community has never forgotten. The park became a place where people found their voice, a place that has supported and inspired a cultural revolution that continues to this day. Artist Salvador Torres has been there from the beginning.
Here you see 2011 Logan Avenue. 2011 Logan Avenue was my home address. The fact that we had a freeway go right through the heart of our community, a bridge that came down right on top of my home and others. All of these various families had to move, and there was like a destruction of our community. It was like a bomb had hit it. And so our ideal of a park was very, very important to us.
Chicano! Power! Chicano! Power! Chicano! ¡Órale, raza! ¡Vamos al parque!
See this Chicano Park over there? The 60s were a time when you had basically an uprising of people saying, ya basta, no more, no more. We are going to change the situation for our children and our grandchildren. So you saw individuals that, like Cesar Chavez and his efforts to unionize the farm workers that were predominantly persons of Mexican ancestry. You had Jorge Gonzalez speaking about cultural identity, self-determination, nation, Aslan, that we didn't come from anywhere. We are from here.
Every 10 years, the park's volunteer-led steering committee organizes Noche de Recuerdos, a night of memories, to recognize those who have given their support to the park and to inspire future generations.
Chicano! We got a good program for you tonight. We got some awards coming up so people deserve it. And kind of like passing on the torch to younger people. Check out the exhibits. They will tell you the story. Welcome to the 40th anniversary Noches de Recuerdos of Chicano Park. Bienvenidos.
Before the 70s, any student that attended a college or a university had to study U.S. history. What they wanted back then was to assimilate all the cultures into U.S. culture. We don't want to be assimilated because we have our own culture We were here first. You see, trying to tell Anglos that we were here first, and they say, well, yeah, you were here first, but we took over this country. The Aslan is another hot issue. You got to deal with Aslan.
Well, I wanted to show you this lettering here. These were pieces of sidewalk that belonged here when it was a community. We made this word, Aslan. They brought in some PhDs, so-called experts on the term Aslan, and we've been using it forever. And then we had to go bring our experts, our PhDs, to respond back to them, to say, hey, this is what we mean. You may want to mean something, Aslan is a mythological word that comes from pre-Columbian people. It means the land of the Hurons. It's a bird that looks like a stork. It happens to be part of a migration from the north to the south. Those indigenous people, they came through here and they said that they would return to it in the future.
The origins of the often controversial story of Aslan are in the Aztec codices, pictorial narratives of the civilization's history. The Boturini Codex maps out the footsteps of the Aztec, or Mexica, migration to what is now Mexico City. It was, in part, the legends of Aslan that drove Spanish excursions into what is now California.
Aslan is primarily the southwestern United States that at one time belonged to Mexico until the Mexican-American War. 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. The President of the United States at that particular time was President Polk. You could kind of credit him for obtaining these lands through whichever means and methods he had to use.
Polk fulfilled his campaign promises. If elected, I will give you Mexican blood and Mexican land.
As even Abraham Lincoln stated, it was an unjust war, fueled by racist manifest destiny, fueled on the policies that took the land from the Native American.
One of the current leading Mexican civil rights activists in San Diego is Enrique Morones, director of the not-for-profit volunteer group The Border Angels, which seeks to address the humanitarian issues connected with contemporary Mexican migration.
And the thing that we're most famous for is putting water in the desert so that people don't die. But we also go into the canyons where the people live.
The general population of the United States doesn't know how to deal with racism. They know they can deal a little bit with the African American situation, a little bit. They kind of understand a little bit about the history. But they have no idea about the Mexican history and the United States invading Mexico, taking half its territory. My family lost land during the invasion of Mexico that we were never compensated for. U.S. history doesn't talk about that. They don't talk about manifest destiny and how they're taking lands, and they don't believe it's racism.
When we began school, the first thing that happened to us is our names were changed. My name was from Ramon to Raymond.
Because in San Diego, growing up in the 40s and 50s, because it was a military town, it was very patriotic. So we always said the Pledge of Allegiance every single morning, and we always sang a patriotic song. And we also were taught the history of our forefathers and foremothers came on the Mayflower.
And that's one of the things that the movement would strive for. First thing we had to do, regain our identity. Through what? Culture.
One of the key cultural documents of the Chicano movement was El Plan Espiritual de Aslan, written by Chicano Park activist and poet Alurista.
Aztlán belongs to those who plant the seeds, water the fields, and gather the crops, and not to the foreign Europeans. We do not recognize capricious borders on the Bronze Continent.
For the activists and the people who are still politically committed, Aslan can either mean a real political movement or it could mean a cultural, spiritual homeland. So it's a pretty amorphous idea, but it's a very powerful one. This idea that we are connected by our history to these lands. It's been sort of key to the Chicano movement identity too. But the vast majority of Latinos and Chicanos don't even know about it.
Crusade for Justice, Jorge Gonzalez. What are we doing as a group to continue with this, with what Corky and Cesar Chavez and so many other people, pioneers of the movimiento, have actually done. Some of them are dying out.
This is an example of one of the canvases that were made. They've been used in various meetings. They've been going up and down, up and down, up and down. So they've been wore out.
The planning for this freeway comes about by the late 50s and 60s. And so that was the point that we said we don't wish to have the freeway down on Logan Avenue. We want the freeway over on Harbor Drive. And so Caltrans said one word that our seniors could not understand, that lived in this community, who were organizing in this community. They said, we're not moving it down there because, and they mentioned a word that our seniors never heard before. The word was, it's infeasible. They didn't know what that word meant.
And, you know, we didn't have what they call public advisory committees at that time. So people could just, the city or the officials could do whatever they wanted. We had no rights, in a sense, to speak for ourselves, even though we started saying, this is not right.
You don't see these freeways, you don't see them demolishing middle-class America homes, you know. They come through our communities, you know, through our barrios or through the black ghettos. You want to find a path for that freeway? Yeah, well, right through this community. And at the same time, we're cleaning up the neighborhood. You know, that's the mentality behind this.
Yeah, the redevelopment area process is basically a political process, and Mexican Americans, Chicanos, have not been able to get representation. Now, Chicano Park was part of the redevelopment process because initially the city promised to develop a park. They had planning meetings, and they went on for years. They built the bridge, and Caltrans, the state, took from the city the chunk of land. And eventually, the city let the state begin construction of a highway patrol substation here.
On behalf of the Chicano Park Steering Committee, I want to thank each and every one of you here in this room tonight for coming here.
A young man, and he was also a Brown Beret, former Brown Beret, by the name of Mario Solis, was going through the park, and he noticed that there was bulldozers there in the where the park is now, and he went up to one of the workers and asked him, "Well, what's happening here? Are you guys building the park for us?" And they said, "Park? No, we're not building no park. We're building the parking lot for the highway patrol station." And immediately he went over to San Diego City College and informed the teacher and the students in the class.
Law enforcement was always on our backs, beatings, and all of a sudden we find out that they want to put a law enforcement agency station here. You know, when we had been asking for a park for years.
And the neighborhood residents said, you know, ya basta, we're not going to do this anymore.
And that's when the park was taken over, April 22nd, 1970. And we were in class, and this one student walks in and says, "You know what? The community of Logan Heights is on the verge of taking over this land for a park, and they need support from the student movement." We said, "Well, that's us." As we were driving down here, a lot of things were going through my head because it's like I was thinking, what kind of people are going to be there, man? I was thinking of big, rough, tough radicals, you know. And lo and behold, we parked right there into the park. We see all the people lined up. And I'm looking at grandmothers, grandfathers, little kids, community people.
I'll just put this on for a while so they could see the banner of the Brown Berets. see. And I was picked out for honorary mother. That's what well, now they call me grandmother. Because the years have gone by. Well, the integrity and the pride and the determination of the people was to have a part. And with all that was going on, the programs of education that wasn't going right for our people, the depression, the economy, everything that more or less is going on right now.
Yeah, we have to say we were very angry. We were ready to fight, ready to die. We made a lot of sacrifices, you know, and I felt that we had the right to have a part, and we're going to do it, you know. And we're tired of promises and not kept, and we felt we could do it, you know. I remember I was in a meeting, and somebody a little bit older, and I said, "Yeah, well, we'll ask the city, you know, like a little child, you know. We'll ask." I said, "No, we're not going to ask the city. We're going to do it ourselves, you know. Enough. We're not children anymore, you know." So we were very angry, you know.
Everybody went down. They brought their tools, their picks, their shovels, plants. They began to dig, turn that soil over, begin to plant cactus and maguey plants and whatever they had, they started planting, you know. That was the type of energy that was around at that time. The Chicano movement, the civil rights movement, the American Indian movement, all these things were happening all over the United States. We had people wakening up as to what had happened on this continent.
This is a medicine plant right here. We call it Spanish Savila. The ancestors used to cure a lot of diseases. The Spaniards and everybody says that, you know what I mean, that they discovered America. How are they going to discover America when we were here already? It's a bunch of baloney.
If you see our logo, it has the United States, and it has the Southwest in red, and a hand going up towards San Diego, and a little green spot, which is represents Chicano Park. So it's the brown hand reclaiming the land, and it says Chicano Park, La Tierra Mía, my land.
Zapata's battle cry was Tierra y Libertad, land and liberty. We felt that was very relative to the issue of Chicano Park, because for once, after everything that happened, we got a little frijol, a little bean of land that we could say we got that back.
This is the El Ombligo de Aslan, the navel of Aslan, and this is land that has been recovered. While the European came and stole all the lands from the Indians, we've been able to take some of the land back. So this is liberated land. This is holy land.
This is a kiva, the Chicano Park kiva. And a kiva, to us, is a very important sacred symbol. What I believe that we began experiencing in the 60s with the changes that were taking place in this country and the awareness of racism, it became important for us to understand our culture. And when I say our culture, I'm referring to the Mesoamerican periods of the Olmecs, Mayas, of these ancient civilizations.
We are at San Diego State University. San Diego should be proud. San Diego State University instituted the first Chicano Studies Department in the nation. This is called Montezuma Center. Our student organization at the time was called MAYA, Mexican American Youth Association. And we took over the administration building, and we demanded the creation and development of the first Chicano Studies Department. And I started teaching at that time. When we talk about the modern Chicano movement, we have to connect it somehow at a political level with the black civil rights struggle. Of course, the major differences between the black civil rights movement and the Chicano civil rights movement is that our focus was not on race, our focus was on culture.
And who were your professors? Do you remember who your
Alurista.
professors? Alurista was your professor?
Alurista was one of them. And he taught a class called Aztec Thought and Culture. I think I still have the book. When I got out of those classes, I felt like I could conquer the world. You no longer had fear. You had self-confidence. You know, and you felt like you knew enough to compete with people.
I took it too. It was all new to me, and so we went in there, and studied our history, our culture, our traditions. Whatever we could find. If we wanted to know about ourselves, we had to look for it outside of an educational system. But now, here we had something where we could begin to learn about who we are.
Yes, I think people have to be educated because they're still running around telling us, the brown people, go back to your country, when actually the Europeans were the ones that had to go across all the Atlantic to get here. And our native forefathers were already here when they came in here.
It's important to again recognize here that we are not talking secession. El plan espiritual de Aslan is more of a state of mind and a level of consciousness and commitment. Commitment to self-determination more than anything else.
It's curious to me that there's like 27 virgins appearing in Latin America all at around the same time, 1523, something like that.
Well, obviously, from an indigenous point of view, Spanish were what they were. They were colonizers. And, colonization is a form of imperialism. And what that means is that you subjugate the people. And there are like a number of steps that are associated with it. The first thing you do is destroy their gods. Do away with their gods, their religion, their mythology, their attitude and description of reality.
As an artist, I sought out to reflect in my work my own roots. And that's how I ended up, in that search, I ended up finding all these different traditional ceremonies that are done on this continent. So that was my beginnings.
The late 60s when we started this movement and looking into history and like waking up. We woke up and not only did we realize that we had a great past, but that gave us the foundation to have a great future also. Because we are in transition. We are a new way of perceiving our lives through our culture. We've been shaped by the way the environment has been to us. We were shut down and kept away.
And there are people in the field of education that still think that Chicano studies is not a legitimate academic endeavor, which is hogwash, racist, ethnocentric.
Okay, and then next one we have a jaguar, ¿verdad? Ocelo. Y luego la águila, Cuautli.
Macedonio Arteaga has been working with the San Diego Unified School District to introduce Chicano studies into the public school curriculum, one of the demands of the original park activists some 4 decades ago.
We talked about it in the past, and there was some resistance, and then not only from older folks, but even younger kids who were saying, well, why do we need Chicano studies? Why don't we have white studies? We were hearing these crazy comments, well, everything we learn in our schools is white studies. Individuals think that Chicano history is something separate, and they forget that Chicano history is part of the Southwest. It's part of the United States. And you're not teaching foreign history. It's history that belongs here.
As founder and director of a not-for-profit organization called Discali, Macedonio already works with young people from the community to help raise their awareness of Chicano culture. Pablo de la Torre is one of a group of young people attending Iscali's summer school this year.
Me personally, I was really interested in my culture, the native culture, not just the Aztecs. I'm talking about the Huichol and the native people around here in California and a lot of throughout all the United States and throughout Central and South America. But what people taught us in school, saying that the Aztecs were bloodthirsty killers, Mase told me something else, that our culture's not like that at all. Our culture's not about human sacrifice. It's not about killing people, okay? It's about respect. It's about respecting nature, respecting people around you.
So inside of here, there's movements. Sabemos que hay movimientos. So this is the actual story of this tribe. This tribe.
We realized that all those kids were just like us. You know what I mean? They wanted that at any level. It doesn't matter whether it was junior high or middle school or elementary school. Once they started like getting involved in it, they were just like us. You know what I mean? Like our first experience when we went to college and we took our first Chicano studies class. It was like, oh my God, how come nobody ever taught me any of this? You know, like, whoa.
To dominate means that you are not giving anybody else a chance to express themselves. And today you hear about all these gangs, this and gang that and gang. It's just people trying to get together. Friends, they have, they may have come from broken families, but they need other people, so they come together as a group and they become tagged as a gang. And before you know it, they have no direction other than following the bad directions of drugs and crime and so forth. But if there was people interested in them and really working towards their betterment, I believe they can be definitely assisted.
We're not criminals, okay? We feel pain. We feel pain, we feel rejected. We feel that we're little in a world that's big. When a youngster grows up, right, and he grows up in a world of gangs, he goes to the older people in the gangs, and those people from the gangs help him out. They show him comfort and they show him love and everything, right, in order to get him into the gang. But some people, they realize that that's not love and respect and they get out. But most of them, it's really hard to get out because they have nowhere else to go.
When you're living in a poorer community, opportunities aren't the same. So getting into gang violence or drugs or alcohol or ending up in prison, the odds of that happening are really, really high. You know, when I do presentations for teachers and that are working with like African American and Chicano youth, and I said, look, these kids are in a colonized state of mind, and teachers get upset. They're like, no, they're not. You know, they just need to assimilate. It's like, wait a second. Well, the problem is they're not assimilating, and we're not accepting that our role is not working. We're actually oppressing the kids instead of really helping to liberate them. I mean, we're supposed to be right now in like one of the deadliest gang territories in the United States. So be careful, dude. You know? Huh, Norman? What's up, dude?
Hector Villegas, a former gang member, has been involved with Macedonia's group since he was a teenager. He now works as a counselor at the King Chavez Primary Academy, where Chunky Sanchez also teaches music. The King Chavez Academy of Excellence runs a number of schools around San Diego and has received national recognition. Named after Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez, the first school opened in 2000 under the Coronado Bridge next to Chicano Park.
My mom and my dad, when they had their first kid in Mexico, the doctors put that the baby was a mestizo, was a mixed race. Because my mom's light-skinned and she has more of the European side of her. And then my dad is straight dark and, real indigenous. So I started to ask about those things, and my dad told me that he was raised like an indigenous boy, So I was like, wow, I started to become proud. I came alive, and I was really excited to be living, really happy.
To know that Hector's here, I know that the kids here are going to get something that, like, thousands of kids in our district are not going to get. And it's a sad reality.
Kids that, and I even get angry, that we're still at that stage. And I know people, young people, that are struggling with that identity. They don't know who they are.
Van bajando los pueblos hacia la liberación. América. De los indios. Pero luego y pronto, from the other side of the ocean, del otro lado del mar llegaron unos hombres blancos y barbudos. The coming of the Spaniards to the New World. En el nombre del Espíritu Santo venimos a colonizar a los indios. España.
In the 1970s, there was an identity crisis. Who are we? Are we Chicano? Are we Mexican? Are we Mexican-American? Who are we? And that's when we started getting names put on us. For example, the Reagan administration came up with the term Hispanic, for example, a term that we really didn't use. Well, what happened with the Chicano movement was that I think it helped us establish ourselves as who we are, give us that identity. There was a famous activist named Corky Gonzalez. Corky Gonzalez wrote a famous poem called I Am Joaquin. I Am Joaquin, where he goes through the culture from the indigenous blood to the person today.
On April 22nd every year, the Park Steering Committee organizes Chicano Park Day to celebrate the park's takeover. This year's keynote speaker is the daughter of Corky Gonzalez, Nita Gonzalez.
But remember this, our work is not finished. Our work and the work of my father, Corky Gonzalez, is unfinished. Remember as we go through today who we are. We are raza indígena. As my father taught me, we have to speak the truth. We have to remember our history, and we cannot be ashamed of it. I am not Hispano. I am not Latina. I am Chicana. I am raza indígena.
You take our indigenous roots. We don't know who we are. And it keeps us landless. It keeps us without a history. It keeps us without traditions, without culture. It keeps us lost.
For people to recognize their culture, the mural helps that because it's an open book. They don't teach us in the school, you know. Yeah. So we are carrying the torch of all of that heritage.
It occurs in every socio-political movement. It is the artists that make up the front lines in terms of raising consciousness. So we can speak of la guerrilla cultural chicana. Poets, muralists, musicians, and theater people.
I think that's the thing that probably spurred me the most, is that we were thinkers, and there was nothing within our popular culture that said that. The imagery became by us, for us.
You know, culture is the practice of identity. Then as an indigenous woman, my job is remembering, which then entails reclamation. I need to reclaim, you know, and to be able to reclaim then means to also practice, to embody. Then I embody who I am and I practice. The practice is what culture is. What we do and how we do it really matters.
Cultura cura la locura. Culture cures the madness.
We're going to get started with the show. We're going to do most of this. All the skits will be on this side of the stage.
Be brave, Chola. We're chingonas, rucas, chicanas, and we don't give up. It's in our blood.
And we've been performing for about 12 years. And I can tell you right now, bros, if we have a show tomorrow, I can guarantee you more than half of the audience has never seen Chicano theater.
So you keep coming back to El Parque and praying for that protection. You know I'll always be here. I've got your back, Esa.
How can we be the majority here and still our own kids aren't even seeing themselves on stage? Or there's nothing relevant for them?
It's a very sad situation, you know, in regards to the young. And I think, and they know at the same time, they know they're not the TV star. They have no role models, you know, or very few. You know? Cleaning yards, cleaning houses, you know. That's the image that we get of ourselves, you know. So we need culture, you know. And we need it in the educational system.
In addition to running drama-based projects, as part of Macedonia's work with Iskali, he also runs a series of retreats to provide Mexican youth and others a more immersive exposure to indigenous culture and practices.
We have over 100 guys coming to a ceremony that we've been doing for about 13 years now with elders from the different reservations around here. And it's a 3-day ceremony, and it's a rites of passage in one way, but also the bigger thing is just healing for a lot of the guys that come.
Because we all need to do some healing, you know. The trauma, into what they call intergenerational trauma of colonization, you know. And a lot of people don't even know how to define it. We had societies that were matriarchal, but with the coming of European man, it flipped our reality. Now, you know, where has the woman, you know, where has she been put, you know, and where do we think we are as men? That's why these circles are important, you know, to re-educate.
And this is still a discussion, how women's leadership, indigenous women's leadership, is still affected, you know, by those leanings in patriarchy that are still overhanging.
And I think racial oppression is at the crux of a lot of it, because the men were experiencing so much oppression against them, and then trying to be what they weren't. You know, how much Spanish blood do I have in me? And then, you know, where do they take it out? They take it out on their wives or take it out on the kids. It's a vicious cycle. I don't know how else to describe it.
We grew up with family problems in our house. Okay, our dad left when we were little, so I grew up looking at that and looking at what my brother went through. He got affected really badly. He was in and out of juvenile hall, and then he was in and out of prison. Most little brothers want to be like their older brothers, and that created a lot of problems for me. I would get caught by the police, and all of a sudden Mase came and he showed me another perspective. And I soon started to see that what my brother was doing was not right.
He's like a lot of, I mean, almost like 90% of the kids that I work with, they don't have a father. Either their fathers have been killed through violence or they're in prison. You know, totally disengaged with school, not really, pretty much have given up on life, on like on a suicidal path. Yeah, a lot of pain, a lot of anger that they come with, and by, you know, give them a taste of who they really, really are, giving them something to grab onto. That's what it is. Get them back to being human and not being so numb about life, you know? It helps young guys understand, like when they see elders from the reservations from here and they look like their uncles, they're like, oh man, that's me too. And they identify with their indigenous side when they see the elders from the reservations here that look just like them. You just start seeing the connections and realizing that there wasn't a border here for thousands and thousands of years, and you see the connection of all the tribes, of the culture. But also that border has a lot of freaking power, man.
San Diego is known in the Chicano community as the Vietnam of the Southwest because of the law enforcement military policies that have been set loose to address the immigration issue. You know, let's remember that this border here, Tijuana and San Isidro, is the busiest crossing in the entire world.
In 1994, on October 1st of 1994, they started building this wall, the one in the far back, that dark brown wall, and those were the original landing strips for the war in Vietnam, and later in Desert Storm 1 with the first Bush president. And they used those in the desert so the planes and helicopters could land. So this is truly the militarization of the border. This operation Gatekeeper has just been a total failure. It's it's had one success, and that's a success that it should not be proud of, and that's that it's led to the death of thousands of people. We border angels and others estimate that it's at least 10,000 people that have died.
Every year around Christmas, activists from both sides of the San Diego-Tijuana border meet for the popular Mexican celebration of Las Posadas.
Politically progressive Mexican immigrants know about the Chicano movement and make contact with groups, progressive Chicano groups, there's several of them fighting for immigrant rights and against the human rights abuses that the police, the Border Patrol, and other paramilitary organizations like the Minutemen. And so more political Mexican immigrants know who their friends are, and some of those friends are Chicano activists. Well, most of them, actually.
Chicanos have attempted to address the historical condition and issues that affected this people. And of course, there's a lot of changes, within that process.
And that's why it's an unresolved issue, because there's still a lot of people are very ignorant to the struggle of the Chicano. They're very ignorant to what is a Chicano. Even a lot of our own people are afraid of the word Chicano because they feel it's a bad word, it's a controversial word. And to me, being Chicano is a state of mind and a state of heart.
The U.S. and a lot of people in the country do not want to acknowledge what is happening on the border. They don't want to acknowledge what's happening to a particular community. They'd rather, what most people like to do, ignore it, not look in that direction. I assure you, if it was even 100 people dying crossing from Canada to the United States, the U.S. would have reacted in a much different manner than it has. We're talking about 10,000 human beings that have died.
The majority of undocumented workers that come to the United States are not people that are very schooled or educated. They are economic pawns. They're poor people that need to work to support their families. So they cannot identify with Chicanos or Chicano culture, not having lived as a Chicano in the United States. Most of them are not even aware of what Chicano civil rights means today, because today our Chicano civil rights includes the rights of undocumented workers.
That issue is very, very complex. I mean, tremendously complex. They come in here and they have no understanding who Cesar Chavez is. They're natives from Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, Guatemala, and so forth, and they're the ones that come in here. And all these things is related to Chicano Park, directly and indirectly.
I think the Minutemen have raised that a lot. They've raised that a lot. The city gets complaints from them all the time. Why do they get to raise a Mexican flag? That's a city park. They shouldn't have that guy there, that statue. They come in and try to antagonize. Even in 2 years ago in the Chicano Park celebration, we had to leave a space open for them to protest our celebration. It's something that the community was really upset about, and they were saying, well, why is the city letting them, because they have their rights too. They have freedom of speech, just like we have freedom of speech.
This is a very safe environment. People trust this area. You see the murals right there, talking about nobody is illegal, the history must be told. That's key right there. Our history must be told. When we bring groups here, because Border Rangers this is one of our stops, and we usually have Mario or somebody that really knows the history explain it to the groups. Very educational to all of us.
Without art, there is no advancement. You really have a cause and you want to send it out, and you have to do it very creatively because you're dealing with elements that need to be somehow connected, manipulated, or however to make it work. So without the documentation, it didn't happen. And so it's important that we create things, we make things, so that it could be passed on, and we can die happily that we have added a grain of sand to this great evolvement.
You guys ready for Chunky Los Alegranes Mojados? They started this 40 years ago. Let's hear it for Chunky Los Alegranes!
There's one thing people understand, and that's song, dance, poetry, and through that, we've managed to keep ties with everybody. No matter how long they've been here, whether they've been deported and came back, whether they're from Mexico or Latin America or South America or Central America, through that, through the arts, that's why Corky said there could be no revolution without poets.
And it appears that that need is still there, you know, in view of everything that is happening, you know.
It is our responsibility as poets, as muralists, as painters, as musicians, as theater people, as media people, to raise the consciousness of both undocumented workers and Chicanos in the US of A.
There's a lot of racism in Mexico too, and it comes from the Spanish conquest, where Mexican Indian is stupid and ignorant and, you know, doesn't understand society, so you're raised to not associate with that. Even though you look it, you still don't want to associate with it.
You're going to use your sheet right here to figure out your name, because your name is going to be a number and one of the symbols. But you're going to figure it out in what language? Náhuatl. Very good.
I mean, I've seen it with families. You know, I've seen like indigenous people from Mexico that come here, and the kids right away don't want to learn the language anymore. They want to be American. I mean, it just happens instantly, and it's really frightening, actually, the power of that line.
This whole effort of Americanization, which means like sterilizing our history, you know, Chicano Park obviously speaks up for that, so it immediately becomes controversial.
A lot of the youth, they don't know really, you know, the struggle of the park. Chunky and myself, my granddaughter, will do tours, you know, talk to them about the history and how the park was developed. And a lot of times it'll get students to want to get involved in things. And it didn't have to be Chicano Park. Maybe they say, well, they go back to their schools and say, well, you know what, now I'm going to get involved in that club because that gave me, you know, some inspiration.
Yeah, it stirs consciousness, you know. It should stir consciousness. If it's going to do anything, it has to stir consciousness.
We're coming to get the willow for the ceremony tonight. We're gonna use this willow. We'll use it in building our sweat lodge.
Having our indigenous roots, being aware of them, acknowledging it, you know, all of a sudden gives us something else. Identity, you know, culture, traditions.
This group is growing. It's growing really fast, growing up in schools around this neighborhood, right? It's growing up in schools and other parts. So I think that people will meet people like Macedonio and other people to help them learn and to be in the environment of knowledge and respect.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful new beginning, opening our minds up to our true history with this magnificent panoramic view of Mesoamerica, the American Southwest, where the Native Americans made major contributions to our culture. And so we want to see this. We want to live it.
We shall continue to live, my brother. We shall continue to fight, my friend. We shall continue to live, my brother. We shall continue to fight, my friend. For Chicano born under the bridge.
This is the home of the Kumeyaay Nation. And we've been very fortunate to have the elders here allow us to have ceremony right here on their land. There's some of you here that speak still your native languages, ¿verdad? So we want to start planting some of those little seeds. They're coming back. Our ways are coming back. It's real beautiful, relatives. You know, we do this in a good way. We do this the best way that we know, and we do it with our heart and our love for the community.
My mom left for Mexico when she was 12. When she came here to the United States, she met my dad. My dad was a machista. He used to hit her, slap her. He used to make her eat on the floor. My mom has gone through a lot. She was deported 3 times, and she still came here and searched for a better life. And all she got was this. I can't cry. I just can't, because I was so used to just holding the pain inside. So my brother wouldn't see me cry, because he would just make fun of me and he would just tell me that I'm weak. But the pain inside me is big.
I think that's all a part of that intergenerational trauma that we pass on. I want to keep using the word decolonizing ourselves, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually. Indigenous people have cleansing, initiatory ceremonies that enable young men to be taught the culture and to be taught the ways.
These are lava rocks. First they're gonna light it up. They're gonna get some tongs and then drag them over there in the middle, put them right there, and then we're gonna put water over them. And it's gonna make vapor. It's gonna create heat.
Then you close the temezcal, you close it, so it's totally dark over there. And then you chant and you say prayers. And you also teach culture.
The Sweat Lodge has been on this continent from the beginning of time. They say it was the first house. When we begun to connect with our cousins, I like to refer to them as our cousins, our Native American brothers, one of the first ceremonies that came up was the Ceremonial Purification Lodge. Like for myself, I participated in the Sweat Lodge for over 10 years before I had an elder turn it over to me.
We just start making connections with all the different tribes that are around here, and I mean through this whole continent, but here also in California, we work with other tribes, the Shumash. We help out with some of their youth, and they help us out in some ways as well. We see them as our people, and they see us as their people.
Chicano movement is part of an international movement of liberation of people from colonial domination, intellectual, cultural, and even political domination. And the culture is really an important tool for connecting with the kids. It's sort of a way of saying we're more than just, exploited workers, and we have a deeper heritage that's as good or maybe even better than some of the European culture.
The movement is transforming itself. And it's still the same thing because it's still a form of resistance. It's still a form of self-determination, and the movement has always been about self-determination.
Like today, I'm in different places, and people come up to me or people stop me or whatever, and they're like, "Are you native? Are you a native?" They see the braid, they see the skin, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm native." And they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm from Mexico. And they start laughing. And they're like, "Oh, I thought you were from a reservation up here. I thought you were like a real native." I explained to them, "Hey, check this out. The only thing that happens is the English went up there, the Spanish came over here, and they put a border, but we're all the same people, and they just, yeah, right. They give me that, yeah, right type of thing. But, that's the same thing that these kids are going through with their identity. You look real native and more native than most people on some reservations, and you're not. You're Mexican, So it's like, what's going on here? What's happening here? Why don't people get it?
There's native law in America. There's law, and then there's native law. We Chicanos don't even have that right. We do not have the right to be heard as indigenous people. We have no voice.
I'd like to say that thank you for letting me be here. And I was at the Sweat Lodge. I never felt that before. Man, I can't even express these feelings. I never felt this way. We were in the circle. I had this weird feeling like a big weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like I was carrying all that pain around, and when we were sweating too, my whole body just was just tingling, and I felt like I was clean. Like I cleaned myself physically, mentally, and spiritually, and I'm just happy, and I was actually about to cry in the Sweat Lodge, but I guess not my time right now.
Chicano Park is it's our umbilical cord. A lot of the young guys that you saw today leading the fire, last night leading the fire, singing some of the songs, they're all from that community. They're all from the park. They're all from Logan. They're all from that area right there. That's really the heart of the movement for us in San Diego. Actually, that's how I learned. I was at the park one day, and I saw the Mexica dancers, the Aztec dancers. They were dancing, and I was like, I had never even seen them. Growing up here in San Diego, I'd never seen them. And then through that group, we traveled to different reservations here locally, and I just got more and more interested in it. But yeah, it was really the park. It was the park that did it. I mean, the power of the energy that gets created there, it's just it's amazing.
Well, it's certainly part of the American drama of fighting to be included and trying to create a space within this country for different cultural, political expression.
We're displaced, in other words, from our history. We're displaced from our land. We're displaced from our languages. We're displaced from our, from our understanding of who we are. But the term Chicano allows us then to reconnect, with our history.
And I think for all of us, in having gone through that, we still identify with that history, even with the concept of Aslan, which means that that we are still part of this land.
And the Chicano movement is part of this attempt to kind of make things better for Chicanos and Mexicans and other people as well. I mean, in the long run, we're all in it together. So education is the key.
Every column, every unique column has its own particular light source. And that light source has... The question is this a dream? Well, who would ever know that my house was there and my bedroom was there and I was dreaming there very much about becoming an artist. And where am I now? That is why our future generations that are coming, that love art, that are sensitive to humanity, are going to continue working, are going to continue to understand who we are and what we're trying to do.
On Chicano Park Day especially, I go through the whole park and I have this feeling of brotherhood with not just all the people that are there, but people that aren't there, people that have passed. We have ashes of Corky Gonzalez from the Crusade for Justice in Denver, Colorado. He attended so many of our celebrations, and I feel that everybody's there at one, celebrating together and enjoying it, because the park was for the people.
In the words of Crazy Horse, that great chief, Lakota chief who fought for his people, in his words he says, when they asked him, where's your land? You know what he answered? Wherever the bones of my ancestors are, that's my land. Yeah. That's our land. That's where we stand. So no matter what people want to say about go back to Mexico, we are in Mexico. This is our homeland. Don't forget that. We will always be here as our ancestors' bones lie across the Southways and South and Central America. Que viva Chicano Park! Que viva Chicano Park! Que viva! Que viva Chicano Park! Que viva! Que viva Chicano
Park! We shall continue to live, my brother. We shall continue to fight, my friend. We shall continue to live, my